Welcome, my name is Sage, and today we're going to be doing a little bit of a different video idea I've had for a while. Basically, I'm going to rank all the units in Shining Force 2. This is a relatively unknown game, it's pretty niche. It's like this strategy RPG on the Genesis. And I thought covering it would be pretty nice, especially since there's just like a general lack of information that's not like a decade old about this game. So, anyways, I've organized the characters in order of their join time. Actually, yeah, he should be right there, or right about there. But yeah, let's get into it. Starting off with Bowie, he's essentially the he's the lord of the game basically. He has 6 movement in his class, even when he promotes, which is generally not that bad, especially since he doesn't have the worst terrain bonuses. He also gets access to Egress, which is basically a spell that lets you get out of a battle for free, but you get to keep the experience. So that's pretty handy for grinding, if you want to count that towards his usefulness. He also gets the bolt spells, but they're generally pretty late into his level, so they're not all that worthwhile, but if you can use them and they benefit you, they are pretty good. But generally speaking, he's going to be hitting stuff with his sword. And he does have above average HP, attack and defense, which makes him pretty valuable. He has a bit of a rough start because of the first 2 starting weapons he gets. He doesn't have too much attack, but he snowballs pretty fast. So I would put him in A tier. I'm actually gonna rename the tiers. I'm gonna put this at, honestly, really nice. I'll put this as solid enough. Yeah. Sorry I'm doing this mid-recording. I just wanted to kind of further illustrate my opinions. Alright, so Sarah. Sarah is the healer, the first healer in the game you get. Healers have 5 move. Both of her promotions have 5 move, but one is infinitely superior. I'll get to that in a second. So she gets heal, detox, slow, and I think blast, which is like a wind elemental spell. Generally speaking, earlier on into the game, she's gonna be pretty nice. By the way, I'm rating this based off of the highest difficulty. I think it's called like super. Where enemies have like 0.25 more attack power or something. I don't know the exact numbers, but that's what I'm going off of. But anyways, Sarah, early on, she's pretty nice because you don't really need to waste many of your turns using medicinal herbs. She can kind of just flow pretty well, especially when you don't have many members. But as you start getting more characters that get more agility, you'll notice that Sarah is very slow. And since she has 5 moves, she doesn't actually keep up that well. And despite having an offensive spell via Blast, Blast is one of the weakest spells in the game. And it's not very easy to give her experience outside of having her heal other people and heal herself. Now, it's pretty easy to like chip down enemies to give her EXP, which is perfectly valid. Which is what I do. But generally speaking, it's better to just have healing seeds, which are essentially the buff version of medicinal herbs, to heal most of your frontline units. So she definitely starts losing value until promotion. Now, she has 2 promotions, one of which is like a Victor. It's basically like a bishop in a Fire Emblem game. But, like I said, her spell list is not going to be good. And since she's like stuck as basically She's not really a combat unit. She's kind of just stuck in purgatory where her healing becomes less and less useful, and overall you just decide to drop her. But her saving grace is her second promotion, which is Master Monk, which greatly improves her abilities. Basically, Master Monk is like... I don't know how to describe it. It's like... There's no like Fire Emblem equivalent, I would say, but it's like a brawler type class with the magic from the healer. It has less MP than the Vicar, but Sarah's spells are generally not that great anyway. And while it does have the same move, she gets super high attack, not only naturally, but also from the weapons that she gains. So she becomes a much better frontline unit, especially since she can just heal herself. Slow is more useful as well, because she's generally going to be near the enemies a lot more because she can hit them very hard. So that slow debuff, which nerfs defense and speed, is very nice. So overall, if we're ranking her for Vicar, I'd probably put her here. But the glow up from Master Monk honestly makes me put her here. So yeah. Moving on to Chester. Okay, Chester is like a mixed bag for a lot of people, and I can see why. He's pretty subpar in like every area, but he like excels in HP. And I think agility over his levels. Don't quote me on that though. He's solid enough. He has 7 move in his base class, although there's a fair amount of terrain that centaurs get affected by. I don't think that really stops him from doing what he's supposed to. He takes hits decently well. His biggest problem is that he doesn't do enough damage, honestly. He just doesn't hit very hard. He does get access to 2 range via the javelin type weapons that exist. But it's not like Fire Emblem where you retaliate on the enemy phase, so that's not super important. Although it is nice to not overlap ranges, because in this game you're generally grouping up on enemies, and not interfering with another unit's attack range can be pretty nice, because most of the units that hit super hard hit at 1 range. So that is nice. But overall, Chester is just kind of alright. He's never really super good. He is a pretty good contender for one of the items called the Power Ring. You get it pretty early on. Obviously, it boosts your attack. And since he has high enough movement, he can use it to pretty good effect, especially hitting at 2 range. Generally, he's just solid. His promotions are probably why he's not as good as he could be. You have the standard promotion Paladin, which is basically just an upgraded knight. It has the same move, still has the terrain bonuses. It just helps solidify him more as a tank, but as the game goes on, I feel Chester just becomes more and more underwhelming because his attack doesn't scale that well, in my experience. And then he kind of gets shafted because his second promotion, which is the Pegasus, is actually pretty good. It's like a flying version of the Paladin, minus the terrain bonuses. But for some reason, Chester like loses HP and defense from it, which isn't a worthy trade because that's kind of like his whole gimmick. So yeah, I would say Chester joins early enough to do stuff, but he's not really that. He's not excelling at anything. So I put him in solid enough because as someone who like replaces Chester, he's around for long enough in comparison to some of these units that I wouldn't even like consider using sometimes. So yeah, I think this is a good spot. Next we have Jaha. Jaha is one of the tankiest units in the game. He's basically like, I wouldn't say an armor knight because he's actually good, but basically that. He has high attack and high defense. And axes. Axes are like slightly weaker than swords. They don't have like a 2 range option like lances, so that kind of sucks. And he has 5 move at base. But none of that really matters, because he hits very hard in comparison to most of your units. He takes damage like a champ despite having lower base HP, which he will eventually grow out of. And overall, he's just really good at his role. He has 2 promotions, which one is just way better than the other. He has the Gladiator promotion, which is kind of just like a standard upgrade. Nothing too crazy. It still has 5 move. So it's not really that great. Long term. But Jaha will still perform well because it's Jaha. And then he has a secondary promotion, which is the Baron's. Yeah, it's called the Baron. And it has 6 move and swords. And this actually creates an interesting niche because I think he basically gets Bowie's movement with better bulk, and his crit chance. Every class has like an innate crit damage value and crit chance, and Baron has like a 1 out of 8 crit chance with 150% extra damage, which is pretty amazing. There's also trying to think of it. In the end game, there's an ultimate weapon, an axe that increases your movement. And since you have access to axes and swords, you can like increase his movement and then switch to a sword to attack, which I think is pretty funny. But yeah, overall, definitely really nice. I can't think of a run where you wouldn't want to use Jaha long term, unless you just felt like replacing him. Next up is Kaizen, who is pretty interesting. I always kind of like undervalued one of his promotional pets with this wizard. Quite frankly, I'm just gonna be honest. Outside of his main attacking spell, which is Blaze, the other spells that he gets are pretty terrible. One is Muddle, which is like bugged, so it doesn't work. It's basically like supposed to be a confusion spell. He gets D-Soul, which is okay, but it's not really reliable. He gets Diesel too, which is like a 50% chance to instant kill, which is pretty nice, but still not that reliable. And I forget the other spell he has. Let me check really quickly. It's got like, I don't know. It's forgettable enough for me to not remember, so it's not a good sign. It's Dispel, which I think like gets rid of debuffs, which yeah, it's not good. It's like rarely ever valuable. So he's kind of in the same boat as Sarah, that he doesn't really. He's like good enough early on, but eventually starts doing less and less damage that's relevant, which kind of slows his EXP gain down. He's also very frail and can't really heal himself for EXP, so he can kind of struggle. The main reason I don't value the wizard path that much is Kaizen doesn't really get much from delaying his promotion. I'd say the promotion level in this game is 40 for reference. Generally, you want to promote your mages semi-quickly. Like, I usually say for most units, you promote around level 25 to 30. For mages, I'd just say promote at level 25, since it can be pretty time-consuming. And Kaizen doesn't get Blaze 4 until level 35, which is essentially if you promote at 25 and then get him to level 10, he'll learn it. Which is somewhat quick, but it's not the fastest. Luckily, Blaze 4 is pretty cost effective. It's only like 10 MP per cast for about 40 damage. Which is solid enough, but like I said, his spell list is pretty dog shit outside of that. And he has another path which I just value a lot more, which is the Sorcerer path. Um, basically he like loses all of his spells for some summoning spells in Sorcerer, which are very powerful. By the time he gets Blaze 4, if you promote him into a Sorcerer, he'll get two of the stronger versions of the base spells that he's going to learn. Or, well, he gets one at level 32. And then he gets another one like 2 levels after you would get Blaze 4. And the important distinction is that these spells do way more damage in comparison. Let me just see. Spells. I'm just checking because I want to be like as descriptive as possible. So his base, the the second spell that he gets, Dow 2, is the same damage as Blaze 4, and it costs 5 more MP. But he can also get Apollo 2, which is 2 more MP, which does 50 damage. 2 levels after he gets Blaze 4, and that doesn't seem super relevant. But the main thing, I'm pretty sure... Well, let me check here, because I don't want to be wrong. I'm pretty sure they have, like, the same AoE range as some of the earlier Blaze levels, which Blaze 4 doesn't have, which is pretty important. And actually, let me see, how much does Blaze 4 cost? Yeah, it's 10 MP. Yeah. They have the same effective radius, so they do more damage, even though it's, like, spread damage, so it's not as much. But they do more damage, and by the time Kaizen is, like... Well, he doesn't learn a spell for a while. He gets the next spell, like, 4 levels later, which... Sorry, I'm just checking, just to be, like... Just so I'm not, like, saying shit and it doesn't make that much sense. He gets... probably the next notable spell after level 37 at around 46, which essentially if you promote it at level 25, you can like do the math. 46 minus 25, 21. So at level 21 he gets Neptune 2, which is very powerful. Hold on. Yeah, does 60 damage for 19 MP. And you might not think this stuff is worth it, but they also have like more cost-effective, weaker versions that are like half the power. They do cost more MP, but Kaizen just naturally has a lot of MP. And I just think it's generally a better trade-off, because Blaze isn't AoE, which kind of Blaze 4, which is the main damaging spell, and if you do go for the AoE versions, which are like level 2 and 3, you have like 15 damage, which is not good. So yeah, I think if you put him as a wizard, he would be like here. But considering sorcerer, I'm going to put him up here. Now, on to Slade. It's going to be a much simpler unit to talk about. Slade, when he joins, quite frankly, he's just pretty underwhelming. He's weaker than most of your other party members because he's like slightly underleveled. And he kind of has bad bulk. But he has very good traits. For one, his class has 7 movement, which is as high as Chester. But he doesn't have nearly as bad terrain bonuses. He basically walks the map for free, which is really good. He has access to daggers, which are just worse swords. So nothing really too special in the weapon department, but he still does a lot of damage when you do level him up, and it really doesn't take much effort. The map he joins in, it's really easy to get him kills, because a lot of the enemies come towards you, and the other enemies that don't are pretty squishy mages. So once you do that, Slade is basically on par with Bowie, because he's slightly weaker. attack-wise, I would say. Like, slightly weaker attack-wise. But he has more movement, which is very good. Which also makes him a good contender for the power ring that I mentioned before with Chester. And then his promotion kind of just pushes him over the edge. He still has the really good movement type. And then he just gets access to swords. And from there on out, he's kind of just like, honestly, a better Bowie, I would say. He's just really good. Now, you would think his bulk is like super unimpressive to compensate or something. Honestly, he has average enough bulk. Most units will be getting like 2 to 3 hit KO'd at, I won't say at best, because there are definitely exceptions, but generally, your units don't want to take more than 2 hits. And Slade is like no exception, so I wouldn't really say he's like really frailer in comparison to most units. There are some that are definitely stupidly good at taking hits, but Slade is just a unit has average bulk. Honestly, I put him in S. I really can't not put him in S. He's like slower to snowball, I guess, but it really doesn't matter. Like, he joined super early. By the time he can even like replace Slade, he's definitely gonna be one of the best members on your party by far. Especially since he has high agility, so he gets his turns fairly often. He can even just be like utility with healing items if you really needed him to. He's just very versatile in the sense that he hits hard, he's very fast, he's very mobile, and well, I don't know if I would call that versatile, but you know what I'm trying to say. He's very good at what he does. So yeah, I would put him up there. If you put him down here, I would also understand. But generally speaking, I think he's very good. He also gets some spells in Ninja, but they're basically just copies of other elemental spells. And they come pretty late, so I don't think they're too crazy, but they can be nice. And then his ultimate weapons are just like, well, the best one can literally just instant kill enemies. So yeah, it's almost like they just wanted you to use Slade. Which I definitely would. He's pretty awesome. Now, on to Kiwi. Kiwi is, I'm just gonna put him here. Anyone who's played this game knows why Kiwi is here. He's very bad. So, earlier I mentioned how Jaha has good bulk. Kiwi is similar in a sense. He has lower HP, but higher defense. The main difference is that his HP does not scale well at all, unlike Jaha's. Jaha is naturally going to grow out of that lower HP stat like most units are supposed to. Kiwi can get into the higher levels and still have under 20 HP, which is horrible, because it greatly defeats the purpose of his high defense. He's supposed to be like this giga tank, but enemies are gonna 3 to 2 shot him anyway, and mages just outright one shot him. He also has 5 move just like Jaha, and he's very slow, which doesn't translate well. And worst of all, which probably makes him like super hard to like raise up without immense favoritism, he doesn't do a lot of damage. Most unarmed characters do solid damage. These are usually like animals, or like basically you see like someone like him would be an unarmed character, right? Kiwi just does not do good enough damage to keep the EXP going. He's going to be behind the party consistently. He's just not doing anything valuable. Even when you promote him, he honestly gets one of the bigger glow-ups. He has high movement and still gets the terrain bonuses while flying, which is pretty amazing, but it's on Kiwi, so it's not great. It does have like a 1 out of 3 chance of using this fire breath attack that actually does scale with your level. And the lowest level is like 30 damage and the highest is 60. The problem is Kiwi only does it 1 out of 3 times. He enters combat. And that's just not reliable enough. Like, if he could do it on command and, like, gain MP and they were spells, he could honestly be pretty valuable, but yeah, he's just not. Yeah, Kiwi's just, like, I wouldn't say a joke character, because they kind of, like, treat it like him joining is kind of sad, but yeah, he's definitely not great. So, polar opposites, a character who immediately goes in S tier, Peter. So Peter joins you. When he first joins you, he's actually an AI controlled unit, which means he'll like go out there and kill stuff on his own. You might think this is a bad thing. Um, the only bad thing about it is the fact that he might like steal your kills, but I do think he still gets experience. You'll notice immediately that even though he's AI controlled, he's super fucking broken. He's got really good defense because unpromoted he has terrain bonuses despite being a flying class. So he just ignores terrain while still being super bulky. He hits really hard, and that's like all there is to him, but he's also fairly mobile as well due to being a flyer, obviously. He also has an innate resistance to fire, which isn't too big, but you know, it's kind of just like adding on to the pile of his strengths. And once he promotes, it's basically just over. Like he's just insane. He does a shit ton of damage. I think he loses the terrain bonuses, but it doesn't matter at that point. He's already just grown into a naturally bulky unit. And overall, he's just like the equivalent of a Wyvern Rider. He's pretty much never going to be in danger. He just snowballs really easily. And if you take him off your force, it's a very big loss because you generally don't have many great flyers. Like, you have workable flyers, but Peter is the flyer by far. It's not really a contest. So yeah, easy S tier. Moving on, we have May. May joins... She technically permanently joins the force before Peter. Um, it doesn't really matter. She's your first archer you get, and she has 6 move. Even when promoted, she doesn't have a split path or anything. She kind of struggles with terrain since she's like cavalry unit, but I don't find it like there are too many maps where I'm just not going to bring her. Because, again, she does join when there are no competition for slots. She also has slightly higher attack than the other archers, if I'm not mistaken, so that's already a benefit there. Although they would have more movement than her because of said terrain problems. That being said, the fact she can attack at range and with better weapons on her when she promotes, she'll be able to attack at 3 range. She's not doing anything crazy, but I always find Mei useful if you do decide to use her. She's kind of frail, but outside of that, she's pretty nice to have. You can pretty easily take her away, but at the same time, she's pretty easy to slot onto a team and keep her for the rest of the game. So I'll put her here. I'd probably put her over Chester, because Chester does exist early on, but I wouldn't say he's the MVP. Moving on to Geralt. This guy's an absolute beast. I already mentioned that unarmed characters have really high attack. Geralt displays this to full effect in his joining map. He just does a shit ton of damage. If he doesn't like 2-hit something, he 3-hits it, like guaranteed. He just does so much fucking damage. And he's like, he's not super bulky, but it's really easy to just have him hit something and then support him via healing or something. His main problem is that he always has 5 movement, but he's honestly one of the units I would like give one of the movement boosting items, whether it's the ring that just like you equip on him and it boosts his movement, or it's the permanent movement booster. I didn't mention it for earlier characters, although yeah, there are stat boosters and certain items that will help their bulk and such. But yeah, Geralt, I just think he's personally really nice. I think he earns his spot on the team much more than most other units that join after him. I think he's after this point, most of the units are just straight up worse, if not debatably on the same tier. So that should just like say a lot about how good he is. Next up is Luke. He's your Birdman of the game, one of the two. He's the unpromoted one. You would expect, after what I said about Peter, to kind of apply to Luke, since swords are the strongest weapon type, outside of the fact that they don't have a super... They don't really have a ranged option. Luke is just mediocre. He's in the same boat as Chester. He doesn't really have anything he excels at, and his stats don't scale well until later into the game. So he's kind of just there. Again, he does join. Well, actually, let me count. Yeah, he does still join at a point where slots are relatively uncontested, but you could honestly consider putting him on the bench if you really had to. Which, I mean, isn't that uncommon. Luke is just pretty underwhelming. And it's not even like Chester where he can attack at 2 range with the power ring. Because the power ring is still a nice thing to have, but without terrain bonuses, Luke is just kind of underwhelming. Especially since he doesn't get 7 move. Unlike Peter, I'm pretty sure Peter gets 7 move. He's stuck with 6, so his flexibility is pretty bad. And his bulk is also not good. So I would either put him in meh or here, because he still does stuff. He's just not particularly great. Road is not a use in it. I've used, like, personally a lot. Mainly because of his class. Brass Gunner is terrible. It's like... Let me check. I think it's like a 4 move class. Okay, it's 5 movement. But it has... It's basically the Kiwi effect. He's not very fast, and he's going to be affected by terrain a lot. That being said, he does still have access to the range, which can make it easier for him to get EXP and stay around for a while. And he will be naturally tanky. So Rhodes, he's not, like, great, but he's solid enough. I would put him in meh. He honestly has a pretty defined role. If his class was just, like, better suited for the game, he would honestly be, like, here. Maybe even here. But, yeah, Brass Gunner is just not good. Next we have Rick. Rick is... He has the lowest attack of the centaurs. Which is not great. But he has the highest defense, which is honestly pretty appealing. This means he'll, like, take hits a lot better than Chester, even though, like, relatively Chester will have a decent HP lead, but Rick's higher defense bodes well, even outside of Paladin. If he goes Pegasus, you'll still have a pretty high defense stat. And he can actually go Pegasus without his stats decreasing, which is pretty nice as well. Another thing is that he's probably the most realistic Cavalier choice, because the next one, that's like 2 slots over, this guy, he can join you, but he has an opportunity cost, which does hurt him. So yeah, I'd say Rick is solid enough as someone who, like, uses him. I would say he's really nice, but just his availability and overall just not going to do much damage kind of hurts him. But you can pretty easily take him to the end game, I would say. Next we have Eric, who is the second archer. Now, as you can see, our slots are getting quite crowded. I don't know if Roy joins before Elric. He might. I don't know. But I think he's like your second archer. There's not much to say here. He joins like right before the chess battle, when you start like promoting most of your units, so you can like get initial use out of him. You can become a sniper and just start hitting things at range. Honestly though, he's pretty bad. I would put him here. I'll put him over a road because he can actually move with his, if he promotes a sniper, but he just doesn't do much of anything. Like, he has lower attack than Mei, from what I remember. Let me check. Yeah, I'm just checking because I don't want to spread too much hearsay. Yeah, he has lower attack than Mei. So he just hits, he doesn't hit as hard. He might move faster and a bit more mobile, but I don't really think it matters that much. Honestly, because he's just underwhelming. Like, at least a unit like Luke and Chester, they exist long enough to actually, like, if you wanted to invest in them, you could pretty easily do that. You can definitely do that for Elric. It's just he joins when you start like debating who you should be keeping on and off your force. So yeah, not that great for him, unfortunately. Next is Eric. If Eric just like joined you with all the Creed members, he'd be like, honestly, he's definitely the best statistically. He'd be like really nice, but the problem is you don't. You have to pick one. Now, I'm not going to be too harsh for the fact that you have to pick one. I'm still going to put them where I would relatively think they would be. I think Eric would be like solid enough. He's pretty good. Like I said, he has the highest attack out of the Centaurs and is generally just statistically better than the other two by a long shot. Outside of defense. So I'd probably put him like... this is hard because I don't really know. I would probably put Rick like here. Maybe here. Yeah, I think this is... Fuck it, I'll put Rick above Chester. He's pretty... Like I said, he's pretty good. He has a statistical advantage. You can go Paladin or Pegasus, and he has really high attack, which is really nice because the other two struggle to do significant damage. Probably the biggest thing working out of, not in favor of him, is the fact that he's just another attacker. Like, at this point, you definitely have units that can frontline. You don't really need Eric around, which kind of hurts him because even though he can be very impressive, he's just not necessary. Even if you are lacking, like, manpower, you just don't really need it all that much. So, yeah, I'd say he's solid enough. He could definitely be really nice if you, like, joined in favor of Rick. Or if he was just on the force with the other Creed members at the same time, he'd probably be really nice. But even then, I don't know if I would put him up there. So yeah, I think solid enough is a good point. Sarah, not Sarah, Karna, a god. I don't know if I would put her above Peter, personally. A lot of people say she's the best character. I'd say Peter's still better, but Karna is like your actual healer of the game. She gets heal and aura. She also gets boost, which is a very good buffing spell. It's like the reverse of slow. It buffs your defense and your speed. And the second version she gets pretty quickly. And she can just do that at the start of like every battle, and you're in a much more favorable position. And this really helps because she's very self-sufficient for EXP this way. She heals very often, usually multiple people, and since Aura just gives more EXP than heal, she she can just get more EXP to eventually give her more stats and MP. And she's very useful because of boost. You can technically go without Karna, but I definitely say she is by far the best choice. Um, yeah, she's just really good at her job. Now, you might be... A lot of people say that Master Monk Karna is the play over Sarah, and to just wait to promote Sarah. I think that's a horrible idea. Sarah is going to have more attack as a Master Monk anyway, at least on average. Even though stats are pretty random in this game, Sarah generally has more attack. And Karna's role is still more than suitable for a Victor. She's just going to be spamming spells 90% of the time. And like I mentioned with Eric, you don't really need another Giga combat unit at that point. So her utility is more than enough. Like if you stay as a Vicar, or I'll just say a Bishop, that sounds better. A Bishop, she's more than fine. Like I'd honestly put her at the same place regardless of what her promotion is. But yeah, I generally say it's better to give the Master Monk promotion to Sarah by far. Moving on to Randolph. Randolph is like, alright. He's pretty much the same issue uh as Eric, except he's just worse than Jaha, which makes him even less favorable. He's also... I don't know if you ever even get a second Baron promotional item, and if you do, it's very late into the game. So, you're just getting a worse Jaha. I don't know why you would want that. You're getting a worse Jaha, and he's probably not even going to be able to promote to his better class. I do think he might have higher attack than Jaha on average, but it's not enough of a bonus to actually care about. So yeah, I don't think he's particularly all that great. Yeah, not much to say about him. He's definitely the worst choice to get at Creed. And then we have Tyron, who is basically just a later joining Kaizen with a better spell list. It's kind of hard because I'd definitely say it's like the second best choice. You don't need a combat heavy unit that much, but Tyron comes with... I'm trying to remember, because they all join at level 25. So he comes with Blaze 2 and Freeze 2 and Sleep. And then Bolts 3 levels later. So he has a decent enough spell list. Then he gets Freeze 3, like 3 levels later. Bolt 2, 4 levels later. And then 3 levels later he gets Freeze 3. Freeze level 4 at level 38. So if you promote him immediately at level 25, he will get... What am I thinking? At level 25... At level 13, he'll get Freeze 4, which is like a level... That's like 60 base power. It's not AoE, but it's still incredibly strong. And that's not much investment. Especially for something that just outright ignores defense. And if I check the spells here, I don't even think it costs that much relative to how much MP he'll have on average. Yeah, it's like 12. Well, it's not 60 damage, it's 50, which is still pretty good. It's also worth mentioning less enemies resist freeze. I think actually the inverse more enemies are weak to freeze than Blaze, which is pretty helpful. It's only 12 MP, and it does around 50 damage on average. That's not much investment. And you also still... well, it takes a while before you get extra spells, like, over 10 levels. But if you do, like, naturally level him, he does eventually get Blaze 4 and Bolt 4. But that just takes forever. That being said, 50 damage with not much investment while still having, like, Bolt 2 and Freeze, not Freeze, Blaze 2 to, like, hit AoE for very weak damage, but it's, like, still EXP at the end of the day, especially if you manage to chip them down. His spell list is just much more geared towards the wizard, and he's honestly pretty appealing if you feel confident you don't need Karna. So that's definitely his best role. You could go sorcerer, but I'd say he missed the spells he has as a mage into, I think, warlock more than sorcerer's summoning spells. Next is Janet. She's like a slightly better Elric. Actually, I don't even think she's a slightly better Elric. Yeah, she's not. She's like a bit faster, but she's noticeably. She has like less attack, which is just. Yeah, no. She's gonna grow less attack on average. Yeah, no. She's not good. Like I said, pretty much everything that I said about Elric will apply to Janet, except she's just worse. Especially since she joins later. Yeah, I just don't know why you get Janet so late. If you got her at like the same time as Elric, they'd be around the same spot. I might still put her over these two. I might put it like that, actually. Yeah, I think that works. But yeah, nothing really to say here. She's just not good. Higgins is interesting because he's actually supposed to be bad, but by the time you get him, he's around the same power level as a like level 25 Cavalier. Not Cavalier, Centaur. I have FE on the brain. His stats don't scale well at all. He's like if you got a Jaden in the middle of the game, and he kind of just performed for a little bit, and then he just fell off. It's honestly pretty funny. Since his stats outside of HP and agility scale pretty badly, he's obviously not great. He's not gonna do much damage. But around the time you get him, he is fine. Like, if you put Higgins on the force, he'll actually do stuff. But yeah, generally I would say it's pretty meh. He's better than these two, for sure. I don't know about these two, though. I don't know about Elric or Road, but I think putting him here is a pretty reasonable thing. He has benefits from his class, but outside of that, no, not really. Actually, I might move Janet down here. I genuinely don't see the reasoning in using them. Yeah, I'm gonna put Janet in bad. I don't. Well, I'll talk about it later because there's a unit that I just really don't like coming up, and I don't know if she's on the same tier as that unit. But, anyways, Screech. He's like a pre-promoted Luke with higher attack, and that's about it. Considering every promote is considered like a level 20 promoted character, Screech's stats aren't as impressive as you might think. His attack also doesn't grow until like later into his leveling cycle. Yeah, he's not great. I wouldn't even say he's necessarily better than Luke, because while you do get him for free, he joins really late. And you might even miss him, which is the funny part. Yeah, he's just, I honestly say he's bad. By the time you get him, you really have no reason to use him. Even if you need a flyer, like Peter's right there. Luke would do better. You have Pegasus Knight options. There's really just nothing for him to do, honestly. Next we have Taya, however you pronounce her name. Pretty much in the same boat as Screech. She, if I'm not mistaken, she like outright gets one shot at base. If not, she really can only live one hit on like 2 HP, which is horrible. So like most of your mages, you're gonna want to try to give her like defense investment. The problem is when she joins, she's basically like a Kazan, however you pronounce it, with just the first spell a sorcerer gets. Now I think she's like a level away from getting another spell. I actually don't remember what level she joins at. Let me see. I'm almost positive she doesn't join at a decent level. Okay, so she joins at level 11. But she gets her first, like, she gets another spell, like, a level after. And then she gets down to, like, 3 levels after. So it's not that bad. Especially since she gets Apollo 2 at level 39. Which would essentially be 12. Which would essentially be level 19. But I just say she's bad. Like, you can certainly do that and do it, and she'll, like, perform well, but she joins so late into the game. Like, again, you don't really need these damage dealers, and she's not offering anything unique that you couldn't have at that point. And her bulk is, like, hideous. Like, it's noticeably worse than Kazan or Tyron, because even 5 levels is enough to give you, like, a decent bit more bulk. And if you decide to be greedy and wait, Taya's bulk is going to be even less comparable to them. So yeah, I just say she's bad. Um, I might say Jeanette is also on the same level. If I'm being completely honest, I don't think she's very good. Uh, Next up is Freja. I think that's his name. He's a pre-promoted healer. Let me see what level he joined at, because this is gonna be pretty relevant. He joins at level 13. And he gets Heal 2 and Detox 2, which are pretty bad, but he gets Aura immediately afterwards. And then he slowly gains more spells. He gets Aura 2, like, at level 20, which is nice. And then he gets Aura 3 at level 26. So we can definitely start snowballing with the auras. The problem is that does take a bit of leveling. And a lot of people put him, like, super high up because he gets Aura. Aura is definitely nice, I will admit. And he can definitely get the EXP flowing pretty easily because of that to get these higher level spells. But he still has to do it, which is kind of a detriment, honestly. That being said, I can't really say he's bad. Also, once he gets attack at around level 29, which is really good. And then after he gets attack at, like, he gets Aura 4 at level 32. So if you do manage to get him that 4, he's by far the best endgame healer. I don't know if Karna gets access to the Aura spells as fast as he does. But honestly, your Karna will probably be, like, super high level in comparison to most of your units, if I'm being honest. Reija is just solid. I'd say he has a very clear use, and that use is very good. It takes a while to get there, which is why I don't put him up here, but it's a good enough use, in my opinion. Next up is Jaro. Jaro's interesting because he's like a filler unit, but he's pretty good, honestly. I'd put him up here. Yeah, I'd put him up here. He doesn't really he doesn't really like require much investment. And I actually think since he's like an enemy, when you meet him, I think on the harder difficulties he actually gets a slight stat boost. But I could be mistaken, and if I am mistaken, I might put him in meh. But that's just what I remember from playing the game. And honestly, he's good filler. Like, I think he will have generally higher attack than Rick or Chester. But the problem is he obviously joins late, so I don't know if I'd put him, like, above or below. I'll put him here. I don't really know. It's kind of hard to have an opinion of Jaro. I haven't really used him much. But he's solid filler. Also, I might move Janet back up. It's hard, because I think Janet is really bad, but these units, they literally serve no purpose, even if you do, like, train them up, in my opinion. Except Taya, but she's... no. Next up, we have... Guyan? Yeah, his name's Guyan. He's... okay. Like... he's basically in the same boat as Randolph. He's not... he's like a worse Jaha. But you might get him earlier than Randolph, because I think Randolph, if he comes with the other 3 Creed characters, he might join later, which is kind of a death sentence, but... yeah. Let me reset the music. Yeah, there's not really much to say about him, since his stats are kind of like level 20 promoted. He's just not very impressive, honestly. Even though that doesn't really matter, he doesn't join at a time that's super favorable to him. He's not, like, really impressive out the gate, which I think is pretty important. Because you only get 12 slots, so you can't really, like... you're not really just gonna want Guyan at that point, and he only joins at... he's, like, level 14. Not that great. I haven't mentioned legendary weapons up until this point, until, like, way earlier. He can have access, he can be a pretty low investment Earth Axe user, which is the axe that boosts move. Other than that, nothing too crazy. I might as well, like, go through the legendary weapons. They're, like, pretty good. Most of them are simple attack boosts. Most of the notable ones, like the Mist Javelin, they're like the strongest 1 to 2 range weapon that I guess I can use in Paladins. And then you get like a staff that slowly recovers MP, which is nice. But outside of that, I'm not really mentioning them because they're basically a non-factor into unit viability, I would say. Now we get to Sheila. I honestly think Sheila's pretty overrated just because she's a Master Monk. I think her availability is, like, pretty suspect. That being said, she's still a Master Monk, so she's still definitely pretty good at the point in the game you get her, but she just joins so late. At level 15, I think she actually has decent spells at that point in the game. She's gonna hit pretty hard, even though she has level 20 promotion stats. I think the biggest problem, like I said, is just her availability. She joins super late. Like, way too late. She'll have boost 1, I guess, but you don't really need it. I guess she can be, like, MP efficient. I mean, EXP efficient. She gets Muddle 2, which is worthless. She has Blast. Yeah, she just doesn't offer anything. She gets Boost 4 at around level 24, but... I mean Boost 2 at around level 24, but... That's not really great. I also think she has the worst attack out of all of the Master Monks, if I'm not mistaken, which isn't a great look. So yeah, she's just alright. I don't know about... Yeah, I just put her right there. Maybe up here, because she's, like, practical. I think the weapon she have will carry her more than those units. But she's still pretty meh, honestly. If I just kept her down here, or... Yeah, just kept her down here, I'd honestly wouldn't... Yeah, I'm just gonna commit to putting her right here. Feel free to prove me wrong, but... Yeah. Next we have Zinc, who's a unit I'm pretty unfamiliar with, all things considered. He has pretty good stats, from what I remember. But he has like 5 move that late into the game, which makes it hard to invest into him. Because you've likely already used your movement booster on another unit, and gave your movement booster that's an equipable to another unit. So it's kind of just like shit out of luck, honestly. He just exists. Part of the reason you really can't like slot him onto your team super easily is because he doesn't really do anything special. And outside of that, I just can't really think of anything that he does, really. Actually, he has 4 move, which is not good at all. Yeah, that's actually really bad. He doesn't even do a bunch of damage from his crits either. Yeah, he's just... I'd honestly say he's bad. Because of the 4 move. He definitely has more use than... He's definitely more useful than a trained Kiwi, I would say, but... That's only because you don't have to invest into him. Next up is Chaz. Chaz is okay, I guess. He's pretty bad, in my opinion. He joins at level 19. Let me check what spells he has. He has... It's hard to remember. I think he has like Freeze 2 and Bolt 3, or Bolt 3. Bolt 2 and Freeze 3. Level 19. Okay, he has Freeze 3 and Blaze 2. Not great. Well, actually, hold on, no. He gets Bolt 1 a level after you level him up. Bolt 2, 3 levels after that. And then you get Freeze 4. Essentially, 19. At like level 25. Honestly, if he just joined at like level 20 or level 23, he'd be a lot better because you wouldn't have to grind for the extra spells. He also gets Bolt 3 and 4 pretty quickly after the fact. So if you really do commit to training him, he can be like super powerful in the end of the game. Because I think Bolt 4 does like 60, maybe even more damage. The problem is you have to level him up to do that, like a decent amount. And while the endgame maps aren't too hard, generally your team is going to be more than locked in at that point. It's like the same thing with Taya. It's just not good. Lemon is kind of in the same boat, although Baron is pretty... It's a pretty good class. I'd consider him the Goto of the game. I could probably consider Chaz the Goto, but Chaz also requires grinding to be the Goto. To be, well, a super effective Goto, which isn't great. Lemon kind of just does his job pretty well. He's definitely worse than the units. Like, if you train Jaha or Randolph, he's definitely worse. But he does his job well enough to be slotted onto one of your slots pretty well. And then we have Claude, who's just bad. He's pretty much in the same boat as Zinc, I think his name, whoever the robot guy is. He has like 4 move and like innate magic resistance to like fire or ice. I forget which one. Which is actually not bad because some of the endgame monsters have spells, but the problem is he also has 4 movement. And he doesn't like bring anything outside of having high defense. He's like an untrained late game Kiwi. Not untrained. He's like a trained late game Kiwi. Minus the movement. Which is just not good. Like, I don't know why you would want to use Claude. Outside of the fact that he looks really cool. And he's like a secret character. But yeah, that's the final character. Looking at this list, it could definitely use a bit of reordering. I'd generally say that Rick is better. Chester. Yeah, I think this looks... People might crucify me for putting Sheila down this low. I do think that they're in the same boat, because I remember Knuckles being very strong weapon, so even though Sheila isn't that great spell-wise, it doesn't really matter that much. Yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with these placements. I definitely think you could argue for some of these units placements. Like, if you put her up here, I wouldn't be, like, too surprised, because you do actually get investment out of them, unlike someone like Randolph or Guyan, but I think... Yeah, I think their problems are all... Still, all of these units down here, their problems are still bad enough to keep them down here. And all the units up here, some of them are pretty shaky, like most notably Luke and Chester. Most people would put them down here, and I don't blame them, honestly. But I think their availability does kind of carry them as a crutch a little bit. Basically all the units up here, I would say, trying them out on your force for a decent amount of time will probably get you pretty far. But yeah, the game is easy enough to use whoever you want. This is just like context into how good I personally think everyone is. Now, I'm not saying that Kiwi is suddenly going to be a good unit if you decide to use him or anything, but don't let this stop you from doing whatever. This game is pretty easy, even on the hardest difficulty. And you can get away with doing a lot of silly shit if you really wanted to. Like making Elric a brass gunner. And just fucking around with a high defense, low movement archer. But yeah, that's gonna be the end of the video. If you guys enjoyed it, like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.